You're listening to This British Life podcast, conversations with interesting people.
Hello, John. I didn't offer you a cup of coffee. I've just realised that you're
good.
right.
I'm all right.
Sorry. But we were just chatting for a second. Firstly, thanks for coming in.
It's a pleasure.
What we were saying about, I was asking if you could use the British policing licence or whatever you call it in other countries, and you said you could do it in Australia, New Zealand.
Yeah. Australia, New Zealand, overseas territories.
Bring that right close to you.
So you've got things like the British Virgin Isles.
Yeah.
I got a job offer the other day to go to, I can't remember the name of it, like Curacao or someone like that, one of the islands. Because whenever there's a murder and things like that, they haven't got the infrastructure to do it.
Oh, right.
So they was always drafting in. So when you're at Scotland Yard as a detective,
Bring that right close to you.
you are like a central resource.
Yeah.
So unless you've got an expertise that you can't be abstracted from, they'll send you anywhere.
Yeah.
So, for example, my mate, there was a murder in the British Virgin Islands. So they said, right, you're going out there. So off he gets sent to the BVI. And he said, when you get there, there's only like 5 people live there. And one guy's murdered someone else over...
Mr. Clue, just get them all in a room.
He said, everyone know who did it. Right? The bloke admitted it.
Yeah.
So he said, so he just spent 18 months taking like a statement every 3 weeks and just dragged it out for 18 months because he just didn't want to come back to Britain. and it was paid for. So,
and you said you were thought about going to New Zealand.
Yeah, New Zealand. So when I was on child abuse, I did a job with the New Zealand police. So also what you got is, over here you got embassies and consulates. With the consulates, everyone will have a police office for that country in there.
Yeah, oh, right.
So the US have got one.
Yeah.
In fact, the US Embassy's got its own US Marines base in there.
So that's their police in that?
Yeah,
right, yeah.
And we'll have the same. And if you want to do like a joint operation, you go through Interpol. There is a process, but also you can go to their consulate and you can speak directly to their people. Oh. So I had a job with the New Zealand police, and the guy said, do you want to come out? And I said, oh, no, I've got kids. He said, it's okay. There's a process. But I was going through the family court, so I couldn't take my kids out of the country for 28 days. There's a 28-day rule. And he said, the problem is, coppers from the UK, they've got this idyllic, vision of what Australia and New Zealand's like. They think
you're not going on holiday.
Yeah. And the guy says, the problem is, Australia, they tend to stay a bit longer. New Zealand, 6 months they're back.
Just bored.
No. He said, what it is, he said, the expats get sent, they're 2 islands.
Yeah.
And he said, the New Zealanders, he said, we do the South Island.
Yeah.
Because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's low crime rate. He said, the North Island, it's all gang.
Oh, right.
Gang culture. And he said, the Maoris, the mongrel mobs and all this. Okay. And he said, the violence is through the roof.
Right, yeah.
Attempted murder is like a standard thing you'll deal with. And he said, over here, you're doubled up. You're 2-man crew. He said, out there, you're on your own.
Really?
And it will be confrontation.
Yeah.
And he said, the other thing is that when you're off duty, in the UK, you've got things to do there.
Yeah.
There's 3 million people.
Right.
And there's nothing. And it's a big landmass.
Yeah.
And he said it drives them crazy. So you get the violence, really extreme, that side of it. Yeah. And then when you go home, it's just dead. There's nothing.
That's weird.
There's just sheep and stars and that's it.
Sheep and stars.
And so in Australia, it's pretty similar as well. But there's a bit more to do in Australia. But quite a few, loads went. But the one where they recruited and loads went to was Canada. So the office I was in, we lost 2 to Australia and 5 went to Canada. And those that went to Canada, they love it.
Yeah.
It tends to be a
And that was how many
place.
years ago?
That was about 2005.
Yeah, so nowadays you think they'll all be going, just forget this.
Yeah, Nate, there's always jobs coming up all the time. The Cayman Islands was a favourite. The Falkland Islands, this was in 2015. I got offered a job investigating child abuse in the Falkland Islands, and it never officially come out, but it's huge corruption with their police. The islands are very strange places, right? Because you can't go anywhere in an island. You're stuck there. And there's a lot of incest. And it sounds like it's an attack on islanders, but it's not.
Yeah.
And the strange thing is, in some islands, it becomes cultural.
Right.
And I'm going to give you an example. So there's two sets of islands, right? The Pitcairn Islands, which is somewhere in the South Pacific, and that's where I think the mutiny on the Bounty took place, the Pitcairn Islands. I think it's got some history there. It's where Cook landed or something. And the other place is the Ascension Islands, which are in the middle of the Atlantic. They're the furthest islands away from anywhere. Right. And there's three islands, Tristan da Cunha, Ascension, and there's another one, right? And basically what they are, they're just these, I think Nelson, what's his name? Napoleon was imprisoned on the Ascension Islands. And that was the last thing I saw of him. And both of them had horrific problems with child abuse, right? And when they went out to investigate it, what they found was on Ascension Islands, there's an American landing strip there. And a lot of when the British did their colonial thing, they pretty much based it on the Romans style.
Oh,
right. And what that is, it's a franchise. If you look at the British Empire, it's a franchise. So they'll have the British East India Company, and you'll have like the West India Company, and then the West African Company and all that, and East India. And so the British go out there, they govern it, but they franchise it out to locals.
We ingratiate ourselves with the government or the ruling.
Always,
or the
hire it
monarchy.
back to them.
Yeah, no, we sort of get in with whoever's in charge and then sort of placate them or whatever, and then get involved. And then sort of getting at that top level. It's not about invading countries and dominating them, destroying them. Well, no, it's about befriending the guys and bribing the guys in charge.
What the Ottomans did, and the Moors the same, when they had the Islamic caliphates, what they would do was destroy any previous culture and mainly get rid of the men and then use the women as slaves. So you've got that, with the Moors, you've got that with the Ottomans. And there was another one, the name comes, it's the North African, the Barbaries, when the pirate ships, there's a word from them. Oh, it comes to me, the Corsairs, Corsairs.
Oh, okay, right.
They did the same, right? They would destroy the infrastructure. But the Romans, what they would do, they would have governance, but it would be franchised to the locals.
Right, yeah.
So and that's what made it work.
Yeah.
And the British did the same. That's why it was successful for so long. They did the same. But wherever you get a colony, they tend to use, it's a really strange thing. I don't know how I ended up, there was someone ended up doing a lot of work for me, had a degree in colonialism. And I ended up looking into this. It was really, really fascinating. And the Irish and the Chinese get used everywhere because they're the most hardy group on the planet. And when again, the British were involved in this, building the railway line in Argentina, and I think they built the railway line in Brazil, right? They couldn't use South Americans because if you take a South American, like an indigenous guy from wherever, say from Guyana, for example, and you take him down out of his jungle environment into like the hills of Chile and that, they get sick and die.
Right, yeah.
They have no tolerance to outside of their own topography. Whereas the Chinese have built railways all around the world, and they're doing so now. Yeah. And of course, the Irish have always been used for the digging, the navigating, and all that. So they did that. So with the Ascension Islands, they ended up having this sort of mix of cultures on this, and because the agriculture and all that is very tight, there's not much they can do. They just rely on boats trading in. They would get to a point sometimes of starvation and malnutrition. So they started trading their young daughters to the sailors. Right. And then they kept doing it to the American base when the Americans built their landing strip. And of course, this information, because it was so endemic, it never got out the island. And it got out once, so that the British government said, we need to deal with this. So, and I knew one guy got sent out there. They got sent out there to investigate it. Yeah. And they found out that it had been going on for generations and generations. Jesus. Their young girls were being traded, their virginity was being traded for fruit and vegetables and things like that. And it was, but when they started looking into it, the guy said, we got hold of the computer, and it was linked to the Attorney General of the island. And of course, when they went through it, they found his computer was all for the child pornography, right? God. And then what happened was any of the outside investigators got arrested and got kicked off the island.
Jesus Christ.
And the Pitcairn Island was the same. Yeah. They found out that it had been...
Was that the one where the governor was involved?
Yeah. And I think unofficially the Falkland Islands are the same. They've had to sort of unofficially dissolve
the islands.
But how it works is really odd. So the Falkland Islands, they'll be affiliated to the nearest British territory constabulary. So the Falkland Islands are actually part of Devon and Cornwall Police.
Oh, right.
And the Pitcairn Islands, are part of Kent Constabulary.
Right.
And so if you're a cop in the Pitcairn Islands and you have to do your fast response driving course, you get shipped all the way over to Maidstone or somewhere. And same I can remember talking to a copper in Gibraltar, and he did his CID course in Hampshire because they're part of Hampshire.
Right. Yeah. Is that still the way now?
Yeah.
Really? You forget, don't you? These little. So the islands, you've got to keep an eye on the islands.
Well, for my job, we have to sort of deal with Jersey and Guernsey.
Yep.
Not the same kind of level of stuff, but they.
So you work for
a trade union.
Yeah. Okay.
And just they sort of come under our office, our regional office. So but yeah, they completely it's law unto themselves, like the Wild West.
Really?
But like workers' rights and healthcare.
Everything.
But there's a deeper issue with that, right? So there was an inquiry that came out circa 2010, a kids' home called Haute de la Garenne in Jersey, the States of Jersey. And the kids were going dark, but we'll come out of it, right? The kids were being sent from the mainland, from care homes, out to Jersey. And there was information coming back because there was a lot of people getting arrested for violent crime in Jersey. And they were all saying the same thing. We were all sent from the UK. We were sent to Jersey, to Haute de la Garenne, and we were tortured. We were abused. We were everything.
Yeah.
And the Jersey police covered it over. And they said, we were put into the basement. And if you go down there, kids died in there. You will find body parts. You will find blood. We were handcuffed in a bath and drowned. Anyway, the UK government had to do something. The information was too great. So they sent probably the best police officer, the bravest I've ever come across, a guy called Lenny Harper, and he applied for the job. He was ex-Met Police, ex-Strathclyde, from the street, this guy, tough, and he was Belfast, he's from Belfast as well, so he's Northern Islander, so he was a no-nonsense guy, but he's a lovely, lovely man, and he gets sent out there in charge of it, and he's commander of this CID unit, and he said he couldn't believe it, because Jersey have got the Channel Islands got the feudal system, right? Which means the landowners have overarching governance of everything, which is a bit like if you ever watch Braveheart when the King of England wants William Wallace's missus. And
right.
They have the same system. And they have a thing called the Royal Honourable Police of Jersey. And they are the children of the landowners.
Right.
And they get a warrant card and they get a uniform and they are instantly made police officers without doing any training. They're given a radio.
Yeah, bloody hell.
Yeah, and and it's the most weirdest system. And he said, you turn up at call and you get these honourable coppers turn up in our cars.
Honourable.
And he said, and one of them had done time for rape. He'd been in prison for rape, one of them. And he said he couldn't believe it. And when he said they'd flooded this basement with sewage right up. So he said, we got archaeologists and anthropologists in. So this is a career detective. He's not your uniform Liddy copper. He knows a score. A bit like Time Team. And they dug down, right? And they had sniffer dog, the best sniffer dog. They had the same sniffer dog that was used in the McCann case. Yeah. The best in the world, right? FBI took it on after all that shenanigans with the McCanns. And the dog gives a knock. They call it a knock. The dog will start doing that. And he said, there's body parts. Now, cadaver dogs are trained to sniff two things, pigs and humans, and I can't tell the difference between the two.
Oh, really?
Right? That we are so alike because every single organ in a pig works in a human.
Heart valves.
There's a bigger reason why certain religions won't eat pig. Right, and it's not to, every single organ will work. Their blood will even work in our system. And their skin suntans, it's really odd. Oh. And when they train the dogs, they train them on pigs. Yeah. And even ballistics, they train them on pigs because it works the same way. Yeah. So they know there's human remains right in there. So the archaeologist finds it. The anthropologist examines it. Said that is a child's skull because there's collagen on it. There's all these reasons, and it's aged between 7 to 11 years old, right? And they found about 5 different skull bits, bagged them all up, off to the laboratory. However, the States of Jersey police didn't want that because they also found the blood staining on the walls. They found the bath. They found the handcuffs, all buried in this sewage. Yeah. Right, they're screwed now, right? And because kids are naming members of the States of Jersey establishment, right? So what they did was the unique seal exhibit bags. So it'll have a number like E123456789, right? So no other exhibit bag in the world will have that. Anyway, they were taken out of that, put into another exhibit bag with the same seal reference, which is impossible, and sent to a different laboratory, and it come back as coconut shell.
Oh, Christ.
Coconut shell,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Bear in mind all the checks it went through, and because it was provable now, and then the whole thing was collapsed. He was kicked off the island. They threatened to arrest him. They threatened to take his granddaughter into care. All of this, boom, happened. So always on the island, always on the island.
These islands, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
But there's a reason, because the British Empire collapsed in 1963, and it looked like the Bank of England was going to collapse because they couldn't pay off the war debt. So what the British did was started up offshore banking. And that's why the Cayman Islands...
Oh, the Brits again, we were the first ones.
Were the first ones. And that's why when you look at Mayfair, so down the road, right, you got W1, Mayfair, Curzon Street, Park Lane and all that. And what they do is their way of laundering money is buy property.
Yeah.
Buying property. So there's this big conglomerate in Pakistan, corrupt as they come, linked to the government, were buying property and laundering the money, then selling it and then buying more property. So that's how they were cleaning it, right? And there's a group called Transparency UK, and they look into this sort of corporate fraud. And all these oligarchs, gangsters, everything, that's what they all do. Buy property, clean it up in Mayfair. They're allowed to do it. Boom. So Pakistan had a history of corruption and of human rights violation until a president, prime minister called Imran Khan turned up, and he said, I'm not having this. Yeah. I'm not having this. The UK's taking a mickey out of us. Our people are corrupt. They're encouraging corruption. It stops with me. Well, where is he now? He's languishing in prison.
Yeah.
You see? Yeah. And this is what they do. So, I mean, the Cayman Islands, they couldn't even herd cattle on there because the cattle would get bitten by mosquitoes.
Oh, right.
They were good for nothing in 1963. So everything changed in 1963. The whole thing changed. And that's when the offshore banking come in. And that's why you've got these overseas protectorates now. Yeah. And that's because it all filters dirty money.
Yeah, it's terrible, isn't it, the old island? Because it's still going on now, nothing gets fixed. So, like, it's happening now. I mean, I don't want to go into it all ago, but the whole child abuse thing, it's way bigger than anybody thinks, and it's more horrendous than people think. Yeah. And it's just there now. Modern society, it's there.
Well, I remember saying when I first started doing this, I said to the podcast, I'm going to tell you one thing. And I said, I will never be proved wrong on this topic. Yeah. And all that's happened is everything I've said has been totally predictive. Yeah. It has all... I mean, I was laughed at to start with. That can't go on. Surely not. Surely MPs can't do this. Surely police can't cover it up. Bit by bit. Because kids are the commodity. Yeah. And it's
there was a lady I was listening to on the radio, and she was saying how... God, this is like 20 years ago, I think. She said in the disaster zones, she said you always had... people would just start turning up, like Englishmen, things like Americans, and start just taking kids because nobody knew whose kid was what. If you just go and get a kid and start walking them off, and you ain't got no paperwork, and then you just take them. You go. So they got wise to it. Oh, that was it because he was part of a charity that would go out these disaster zones, and he said they had to be made aware that when there's a disaster, something happens, tsunami, whatever. People will automatically flood out there and just take the kids. And no, sorry, we haven't got paperwork. And in the confusion of everything, you stick them on and get them out. And she said, but then what they started doing then, they started using locals to do it for them because they realised they can see you're not that kid's kid. So they'd have somebody from that local town would take the kid and pretend it's theirs and just give it on.
There's a guy I know that's his charity. That's what he does. Yeah. And but the thing is, that you can only work within the law of that country. You've got no jurisdiction outside of it because you'll go to prison. So he said, Ukraine, for example, he said, when that all went off, we managed to get the kids into a safe place, but we had to then manage it because it got preyed on. Right. And he said, if you go to sub-Saharan Africa, you'll get attacked because they want the kids.
Oh, Jesus.
And the kids in certain countries, there's I think one in Tanzania, is a brilliant guy called Julian St. John, and he runs this charity and he saves handicapped kids and autistic kids because there's a belief there that they are possessed by the demons and they're used for sacrifice.
Oh, Christ.
So the kids just get chained up and left. Yeah. Some are from loving parents, but they haven't got the infrastructure and the way they don't understand. And we're talking severe autism here. We're talking non-verbal, won't go to the toilet, will bite, will punch and all that. and they're chained up. So he goes and saves them, and he brings them into this compound, and he was getting attacked by organised gangs backed by the local police to take them kids because of the value of that child in witchcraft. Right? And he didn't know what to do. And he ended up recruiting the Maasai tribe. And he said they came and he gave them a mobile phone and they said, if you any trouble, we'll come. So they protect him. So they come and but he says regularly on a weekly basis, someone will try and steal a child. Jesus. And this is one of the things I talk about, ritual abuse, and people again laugh at that, but it's a massive reality. And right, we're in London. There's been 6 London bridges, right? And the last 5 all had in their foundations a human sacrifice. The last 5 London bridges all had a human sacrifice in their foundations.
Bloody hell.
So it goes on here. It's just people just
can't filter through.
They won't have it.
And
they, because some people they like to go and see their palm reader and have a crystal in their house, and they think that you're attacking their little sort of atheistic sort of whatever belief system, paganistic belief system. But I have to say, no, this is an ancient thing that's always gone on. It's always gone on. You get a lot of I work with a lot of young offenders now, and a lot of the young lads that get caught up in the drug stuff, right? County lines or whatever it might be. But anyway, the whole world of drug dealing and drug supply on the Class A level, a lot of the lads that come from a Caribbean background get caught up in juju. They go and see the juju man.
Oh, right,
Right, which is obia, which is a form of voodoo and hoodoo and Santeria and all this. So you've got different parts of Caribbean do different things. In Jamaica, it's called obia, right? Opia. And they see the juju man and he'll do a spell for them. And it might be a sacrifice, it might be anything to protect them, that the police won't catch them, they'll be invisible, they'll get through their crimes, all right. And anyone that comes against them gets sick. And we'll, boom. And that will all have to pay for that.
A lot of the South American cartels do
exactly the
same thing.
Exactly the same.
So they have a weird sort of religion.
I remember in I think it was the late 70s, when did the Cuban thing happen with the prisoners?
Was that 70s, 80s?
Late 70s, early 80s. And when there was court cases, because they were just coming over in like machine gunning people, so outside the courthouses, you'd always find like chicken feathers and blood because they were doing Santeria. They'd paying people to do Santeria at the courthouses, had to clean them up every morning.
I've had the same thing outside my house.
No.
Yeah, I've had chicken talon, a whole chicken talon cut and left there.
Oh, Jesus.
And I've had like pagan reefs with a dead bird in it, put outside.
Right.
Yeah, and I do a lot of work with the Romany Gypsy Irish Traveller thing. And the group that helps get their people out, because there's witchcraft in all communities, and of course.
And what's that, Catholic? Is that this?
No, well, some and some Christian. It's a mix. The Irish will be Catholic, but the Romany won't. The old Romany sort of like, but a lot of them are like Protestant or Christian and all that. But anyway, that side, there is a big culture of witchcraft in there, palm reading and things like that. Of course, and rabbit's foot and all that. And
sort of traditional beliefs kind of wrapped up in everything.
That, but it all comes under the witchcraft umbrella because there's a spell behind it and all that. And of course, this group are trying to get people out of it. They've had the same thing, dead animals outside the house, in a ritualistic fashion. The woman running it, she rang me up about a year ago. She said, the other day we got out and there was a dead cat splayed out in a cross outside our house.
God. I
do find, sometimes I live out in the country, sometimes when I walk out in the woods or whatever, I do find a weird... A couple of times I found weird symbols, not all the time.
Little sticks in a pentagram.
Kind of,
really?
like Blair Witch stuff. And I'm like, not touching that.
Right. That might be a trap.
No, just, not touching that. Bad spirits, evil. But like, it's probably just like hobo symbols or something, like homeless stuff. Because there's like...
it's just somebody who's homeless, just built a little...
Because they have like a church and stuff and they accept there's a few people every now and then. People come, homeless people come for a couple of days and they get sort of sanctuary or whatever. So I think there are symbols around, but I just don't touch it.
I've got them on my phone. Following on, I printed and brought them. There was I got asked to help with a case because I've got this access to these experts, as forensic experts. So I can call on people with the I call it ESDAR, the ground penetrating radar system.
What's that?
ESDAR. So it was used. It first got used in the Falklands War,
right,
to look for graves. So if the Earth's been disturbed, they can put this machine, geophys do it on time tape.
Okay,
but this is where it come from. But you can pull it also, a water version in a house, and it will bring up footprints and it will bring up disturbance in the carpet and things like that. So, everything's a crime scene, and sniffer dogs and all sorts. And we went to a place where 2 children were believed to be been murdered and buried in the West Midlands. And it was meant to be an area renowned for witchcraft as well. And when we went there was all these little voodoo dolls tied to trees, and they were all made out of human hair, all tied all the way around there. And it was a very, very bizarre place, honestly. And I've just been to one in Berkshire a couple of days ago, and it was, they call them fertility symbols, but they're sort of made of flesh.
Oh God!
We don't know what.
Yeah.
With teeth and eyes, but I've got an expert on paganism and all that I go and see. And this woman, there is any symbol. She's a former Satanist, and she's gone to Christianity now. Right. But anything, I run it past her, and she is an encyclopedia, and she tells me exactly what it is, what it means, what it does, what its job is, and things like that. Yeah.
I don't know how you stay sane. I've said this before. Like I said, every time you scratch the surface, John, I think, God, he's carrying a lot in his head. Like going back, it just goes on and on. And some of the stories, I think, God, even to talk about it's hard work, and he's just got it all piled up over the years.
Me and my mate, we walked back from a friend's house a couple of villages over, and we walked through the woods. And again, walking through the woods at night, good idea. You know what I mean? Like, weird
Nothing
stories
good happens after 10.
Basically, as soon as it gets dark, do not go in the woods. But we were walking through this woods and walking through this other village, and I swear, we came across like in a field in the middle of nowhere at like 1 a.m, people dancing around a maypole, all dressed in white with flowers on it. Like it was like a Tuesday evening.
They weren't filming it.
No, it was pitch black.
It was a real.
And we like came across it. We're like, oh, shit! We like backed up really slowly.
I wonder if you spoke to somebody that runs graveyards. There must people be in them all the time doing weird stuff.
We did surveillance on one in Epping Forest.
Right.
And
why was you there? What?
Well, because we had information that witchcraft is going on, right. And there was information there might be sacrifice, but I dismissed it because it's too blatant. That stuff goes on in closed doors, but they might have an animal or something. So, it's really weird that those that are involved in the bloodletting, there's a deeper reason for it, because the demons need blood, and it's a mockery of Jesus Christ who shed his blood.
Oh, right.
So there's a big theological reason. Yeah, everything is an invoke.
Oh, right,
but that's why whenever you deal with it, you never hear the term anti-Buddha, anti-crystal, anti-ascending masters, anti-Alec, but you do hear the term anti-Christ.
Right.
Because their enemy is Christ.
Oh, right.
So, and when you get information from victims and survivors of ritual abuse, it's never a ritual done against Islam, against Buddhism, Hinduism. Hindu gods are used, funny enough, bizarrely enough, Kali, and there's another one. Kali, there's 2 of them that always crop up. Anyway, but it's always an attack on Christianity, Jesus Christ, and the dates are always an antithesis of Christianity.
Well, the upside down cross, is that literally just putting up 2 fingers?
Yeah, it's a mockery. Oh,
right, I thought it was something more.
Yeah, it's a total mockery.
So you were staring at the grave?
So we get called there.
It wasn't about zombies. You didn't?
No.
Right.
And
just asked.
Or Dracula.
Right. Okay.
But I used to get bored, so I used to sit there, and the guy I went with, ex-military, and he was on point. He would never move. And I used to get a sleeping tablet, take it and go to sleep.
Right.
I used to start snoring. He used to love getting up with me. Even in the rain, I'm thinking I'm just going to fall asleep here. But one day they turned up. It was on Halloween, and we had all the recording equipment. All the batteries went dead. Couldn't get anything to work. Comms all went down, and there was a group appeared, and they all started chanting again.
Right.
And he said, "What should we do?" I said, "Well, what can we do? They're not breaking the law. They might be trespassing, but just watch them.
You're not breaking the law,
Just watch them. Just watch them." Went on but they didn't kill anything. But we just sat and observed.
How long were you in the police force?
27.5 years.
When did the what's the word? Not the dodgy stuff, but when did it start getting weird from like just arresting people? I suppose crime, the child protection stuff started.
No, it's strange because I never wanted to go into that. So when I was doing my training, you'd have talks from people from different departments would come in, and all the blokes wanted to be in the TSG, you know. Yeah, smash, and I had no interest in it. Yeah, it's not my game. I'm a loner, right? So I hated basic training. So I've been no good in the military. The police training was bad enough. That was strict enough, and some of that was very military orientated. We had to do marching, and they'd get the guards regiment into. Right. Yeah. So they got like the best of the best to teach us to march. I absolutely effing hated it. Couldn't stand it. And I used to remember sitting there watching everyone lined up in these 3 files like that, right? Every morning, 7 o'clock, boom, 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 and then being inspection. And like a bit of dirt like that, you know, which you could get from someone's downdraft or something. Yeah. It would just be a big deal for them, you know. What's that? And shouting. They used to step on you. So you'd have an officer would come down, officer on parade, and the sergeants would walk past the ranks first, and then he would follow. And what one of the sergeants would do is he'd walk past, he'd tread on your toes or your boot. So they'd scuff, and then they'd what's that? Yeah. And it was just bollocks. It was nonsense. And I can remember then you'd have to all get dismissed, turn around, and march off, right? You know, and I thought, flipping hell, this is how Hitler started with a Nazi party. It's so easy to indoctrinate. Yeah. And then when I read something about indoctrination, it's about breaking someone spiritually, physically, and mentally over, I think, the minimum of a 12-month, 3-month period. And when you look at basic training in the military, it's 3 months. Yeah. Well, the police was 5 months. Yeah. And I think others are a bit longer. But on the whole, it's that. And you actually saw people changing, and their personality would change, and they would become part. And I fought it from the day I started. I fought that indoctrination till the day I left. Yeah. And because I hated it.
They don't do that now, do they? March and inspection.
They still do it, but not like it's been. The police force is pretty shite now. You know, it's rubbish. I mean, it's
you don't rate it anymore.
It's just crap. It's pointless. Yeah. You know, what do they do? You know, they're arresting people for nonsense, and real criminals are laughing. It's just anyone who gets arrested now has got to be thick.
I knew a guy like 5 years ago, and he joined the police. I know 2 people who joined the police. One left within a year, and she was a tough chick. She said, "I'm not putting up with all that crap." And this other guy, he said, "I want to join." We were speaking about property because he couldn't afford his own place. So him and his missus were having to share a studio. And I said, "Well, surely you're in the police, you must be able to afford your own." He said, "No, I mean, I've got to share for a few years." Anyway, he said, "There's no policing." He said, I'm at one place taking notes about what happened to that crime. Then there's a radio coming through. Then I get there after that's happened. I take paperwork. He said, "It's just like I'm just running from place to place. I'm not doing anything." I thought, oh God, it's just.
But if you take London, I'll get back to your original question. I'm not dismissing that. But London used to be the safest city in the world because they had a copper on every thing. This area here would be split into 3 different beats. And they'd have, I know this area, you'd have Vine Street Station, which was at the bottom of this road. And then you'd have West End Central, and they had Bow Street, and they all covered this. They would parade, I think, on a night duty, probably about 40, 50 officers on a night duty. And in the day, you got more of that, and you got CID. Yeah. And every street would be patrolled, foot patrol all through the night. So that's why we went from the safest to one of the worst.
And now they're just trying to play catch up with crimes.
It's just chaos. Yeah. Well, then they're not nicking themselves shaving, as I'd say, But I when I joined the police, I sat there and I my influences were, and this is really odd, and this is how Never Meet Your Heroes. For those old enough to remember, there was a film came out in the 70s, and it's still about now. Al Pacino plays an NYPD detective.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Serpico, Frank Serpico.
Who I thought was great until I spoke to you.
Because it's a great film. Al Pacino's great in it, to be honest. So,
And I watched it and I thought, what a guy. Yeah. When my whistleblowing thing come through, I remember getting an email through, "John, keep going. You're one of the good guys. Love, Paco." I was like, "Oh, well, that's very kind. Yeah. Thank you, Paco." And he went, "Look, I'm doing a talk. I'm ex-whistleblower, NYPD detective like yourself, boom, 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 boom." And when actually you look on what you whistleblow on, it was a load of rubbish. And I spoke to one of his ex-colleagues, and he thought he was an absolute. He said he was an idiot, and he didn't like Irish. That was his problem. And of course, the Irish were running all the they call it the numbers racket and all that. He just didn't like the Irish.
And there's a big association with, especially with the NYPD as well, and these sort of Irish community. Yeah.
But well, their police force is Catholic. It's Irish, because I ended up doing a joint link up with them. I ended up going over there. Irish, Polish, and Italian. And their locker rooms are all, I'll tell you a funny story about that. Their locker rooms are all segregated. Right. They have, what do we call it? When we got it's not the segregation. What do we call it? There's, when two religions are split from each other. There's a word for it. Sectarianism.
Oh, right. Okay.
Right. Anyway, so I sent this message back. Well, I was really kind. He said, my nickname's Paco. My real name is Francesco Serpico. I was like, oh, that's that Frank Serpico. Yeah. And I was really excited. So I went out to Amsterdam to do a talk with him. And I deliberately, I went with an ex-colleague of mine from the police, a girl. I took her out there. And I thought, I'm not going to drink. I'm going to be sober. This is the highlight of my whistleblowing career. And what an idiot. Honestly, he came in and he's very camp. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but very camp. He's got a stupid fedora hat on. He's got all these chains and Lucky Charms. And the ego was pouring out of him. He'd made this film out about himself, which is him stripped to the waist. I mean, the guy's in his 70s shoveling snow. It's very that way. And he was rude. He was just stupid. And it ended up, the girl I was with, she really had to go at him.
Really?
Because we did an interview with him and he said, you need permission from me. And I said, no, I don't. Oh. So it turned into a big argument. And then after
so he's just become a caricature of himself.
Oh, he's an idiot. He's just a moron.
I suppose to save the meeting your heroes, I think he probably was all right once, and then now it's just turned him into something else. But
maybe it was. And then, but then when I spoke to, I ended up doing stuff with the ritual abuse. They've got a ritual abuse unit in the NYPD, and there's a guy there, and he knew him, and he went, "Oh, John, no." He said his problem is he didn't like the Irish,
right?
And they didn't like him. They thought he was a bit.
They didn't put that in the film.
He was a bit effeminate. That's
right. I see. Okay.
And that's where it all went. A little bit.
Okay, because there was a couple of things in the film, weren't they? Sort of accusations, question marks about his sexuality and stuff. There were a couple of wild accusations, and it sort of came out the blue in the film, and I was like, That's an odd thing to sort of. Right. It probably was a real thing because it was sort of.
Especially back then.
Especially a true story or whatever. And it seemed like a curve. It was one of those things that was so odd, it was probably true, you know?
Yeah. It was with all the actors and the lovies.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, that came out of the blue. But like, that's interesting you mentioned that.
Yeah. But a job came out and two of us got sent over to New York and we had to link in with the police in Manhattan. And we go into, it was Midtown Station. Right, and it was just like really the old Hill Street Blues thing. It was like the old Victorian-y type brick police station with the cars out the front, and they're all smashed up and bashed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, over here that you can't put them out if they're bashed up, but there's bits missing from them. They're rough and ready, big V8 engines in them.
That's right, big square block.
Yeah, big bumpers and everything.
Mad Max Interceptor kind of thing.
And it's not like we have the van. Prisoner Transport's a van.
Right.
We used to throw them into the back of a van. The grill, they put them in the back of the car, but it's all encased in there.
Right.
So it must have been fun and games in the back of them cars.
Right behind you.
Right behind, spitting and all sorts.
You were part of the Vice Squad in London. How long did you do that for?
I did that for about 5 years.
What do you remember? So that was, what areas does that cover?
Yeah, round here.
Yeah, so what is it, like W's? A couple of...
Busy man then,
yeah.
That's go far.
We went to red light areas.
All right.
But
now podcasting.
Yeah, so, but we were pan London, but actually we went all around the world. It was Vice that sent me to New York.
Right.
And then, so here... you've got Walker's Court, so just down there on the left, you've got Walker's Court, which is like that iconic peep show road.
Right,
in the 70s films, there's always like, it's a little walkway. The review,
20 foot. Oh no, probably.
And the girls there, they call them clippers. So what they would do is they'd go up and they'd make the proposition that they're a prostitute, and they'd say, look, I'll get us a hotel room, got to pay up front, like 20 quid, and then give me 5 minutes. It's that place around there. Go in there. Of course, they'd bugger off, And then if they tried it on a heavy, it'd smash them.
Right.
Right. So you got them, but you did get there was a street Vice thing. They would the girls would take their punters down to Maird Street, which is French for shite, isn't it? Maird Street, down there, and they'd give them oral pleasure and things like that. A lot of drug dealing down there. It's a bit of a front line. But the real sad part of all this was just down the road, if you go down Glasshouse Street, onto Piccadilly Circus, that's where the Rent Boys were.
Right, yeah.
And there's a lot of books, a lot of the biggest sex scandal ever, was the Elm Guest House.
Way back.
And all that. And there was a book written by a guy called Anthony Daly. It's called Playland. So just around the corner in Shaftesbury Avenue was the Playland, towards the Trop was a Playland arcade. And that's where the boys were picked up and some were never seen again. They were basically raped to death and things like that. Kids from kids' home were brought. But they'd go to the Wimpy Bar and they'd be put on what they call a meat rack. So they would be paraded on the upstairs of the Wimpy Bar.
God. And
the punters would see them, come up and pick them. And they were called chickens, the little boys. But these are boys from kids' homes. And I ended up, this is what I ended up doing, taking a lot of testimonies from them. They ended up as drug addicts and going into prison for crimes of extreme violence. And it was their testimonies. And their lives all stemmed from around here. And of course, they'd be picked up by some by the rich and the famous and some were big names.
It didn't really work, did it? It just got pushed underground more.
That's all it did.
Just cleaned up the glass.
The young boys went into the gay clubs on the Charing Cross Road and Shaftesbury Avenue. That's where they went.
Yeah.
And this is where it wasn't policed properly because they should have been putting a lot of pressure on revoking licences from the licensees of these gay clubs, but they allowed it. And so we had a lot of information from the young boys were saying, look, this is where we're going to this club and that club. The security know we're under. Well, they clearly were young boys, Yeah. And of course, it's all online now.
Right, yeah, of course, yeah. So it's not even on the streets.
Yeah, and the young girls were further up Westminster. They were in off the Edgware Road, the Arab Quarter, and they were in Sussex Gardens, and that's where they were hidden in bushes and they were paraded up and down, when the police weren't there. And that's where I ended up doing my big inquiry, was there with the young girls. So from 9 to 14 years old.
9.
Really sad. It was so sad. And it was, I can talk about this all day and all night, and, the failings of the police. But the problem is that they've got rid of all these units now, right? And when our whistle blew officially, 2006, 2005, I think, 2005, they never investigated another child abuse case until 7 years later, until Jimmy Savile died. And then they had to because of public demand. Because they didn't want it. They just wanted to hide it, that it didn't exist. But it's all coming out again. There's a lot more coming out. And what I exposed has now been corroborated. There's an officer that's just retired, has now provided evidence saying, no, this actually went on, and this guy, Jon Wedger, is telling the truth because this is what happened. And they did everything, the police, to denigrate me, to silence me. But it's now...
Well, as you said, it's just creep now. It's starting to sort of exonerate you from... Yeah,
it will all come back.
Yeah.
It will all come back and come out. But it's always gone on. That's the thing. It's always gone on. And there was a programme was put out by Channel 5 the other day, and the executive producer rang me up a couple of days ago, and it was to do with Sidney Cook, the most infamous paedophile ring going, and it was called The Dirty Dozen. And there was a case of a young boy called Jason Swift who was badly abused and murdered by this group, and they were accused of being involved in the death of 9 boys. They were actually snatching boys off the street.
I think I saw the advert for that show and I thought that looks too awful. I don't want to watch that. I thought,
But the girl who made it, she contacted me. She said, John, did you think it was good? I said, yeah, of course. But, she assumed that when they put Sidney Cook away, that child abuse stopped. And I said, listen, it's like the 3 monkeys, see no evil, hear no evil. Yeah. With street crime, you have to have this overt proactive approach because it is overt and it is proactive. Yeah. You're seeing them riding up in mopeds, snatching people's phones, stabbing people. Yeah. It's in your face, right? Child prostitution's hidden.
Yeah.
You've got to be proactive. You've got to have informants. You've got to have people working the street and you will find it. If you want gold, you've got to dig for it. But it's so convenient that if you ignore it, it ain't there.
Yeah.
So these kids aren't going to come to notice because they're making money. Yeah. Everyone's sort of happy. Well, later on, the kids that are involved in it will end up severely mentally and physically harmed by it if they're still alive. But in the meantime, they're like a subculture that no one wants to go near. Yeah. And if they don't police it, they're not going to see it. So it's prudent for them to do nothing. Yeah. 80% of all reported crime gets written off in the London area. 80%. Now, when I was in the CID, it was the other way round. Right, you couldn't write a crime off. Right. I had a shoplifting one as a young detective. I couldn't find a guy, and I was being pestered every week by my governor. Go and get him. Really? Just nick someone for it, Someone's got to be nicked for it. Because they won't write it off. Now, 80% they write off.
Just do the bare minimum, yeah.
And you used to have front offices where you could come in and report a crime.
Yeah.
And child abuse is so different. It's so different from any other crime. So crime on the whole is a reserve of the lower and the working classes, right? They commit crime. But when I say crime, it's dishonest and violent crime. It's drug dealing, it's shoplifting, it's domestic violence, it's this, it's that, it's robbery, it's just nonsense, right? And it's the low-hanging fruit of society. And I'm not denigrating anyone because there is this undercurrent, this subculture in our society that's feckless and moronic and causes misery for everyone.
Yeah. And that's exacerbated by poverty and conditions and stuff. So.
Well, there's many things, but that they've yet... We could argue that poverty causes crime.
Well, it has an effect, I think.
But when you've got certain in New York, it has got an effect to a degree. But they did a study on it in New York, and they found one of the biggest communities that was in the most intense poverty was the South Koreans. Yet they never committed crime. They never committed crime. You see, so there's other stuff going on, in these lives, but. I would say the biggest contributor to crime is child abuse, because all the people that I've dealt with that have been very serious, violent people that have gone on to live very dysfunctional lives have been abused as children. 80% of the prison population under 25 comes from an abused childhood background, 80%. Yeah. We have an 80% recidivism rate, so they reoffend 80% of the time, right? Whereas the Scandinavians... They've got the opposite because I can go into this, it's called the broken child because they deal with a broken child, right? Now, I work with a lot of these ex-offenders now and they've all come from damaged backgrounds. Yeah. Right? And I gave a talk to someone. I said, right, I'm going to pitch something to you. You want an extension in your house. I'm a builder. I said, right. So I said, what we're going to do is I'm going to get my people to build your extension, right? They're going to want £450 an hour. They send you a text message, that's 50 quid you've got to pay. And if they do any sort of additional conversations, you've got to pay another 50 quid for that, right? And bear in mind, once we built it, there's 80% chance it's going to fall down within the first few months. And I said, how many people would take you up that offer? But that's the same pitch we give them with the criminal justice system. The barristers charge £50 an hour, £450 an hour in a Crown Court. When you want anything done by a solicitor, a fax, anything else, it's minimum 25. Now it's £50. So if they do an email, they'll charge £50. That's what they charge the government. Yeah, they're ripping the arse out the justice system, right? And 80% of those that they deal with, they re-offend. So let's give us your bottles a minute. Let me show you something, right? So that's your bottles there, right? So as a human being, right? You've got your mental capacity. In law, there's two elements: the mens rea, which is a mental intention to do something, and the actus rea, the actual physical. When the two combine, you've got a committing a crime, right? So some people commit crime and actually not mean to do it, and others want to do it but never get round to it, But when you get a person, say this is a young boy, and that child gets hurt, gets abused, right? Mentally, it's going to affect him, right? But he will still function mentally. In fact, he'll probably overfunction because there's a need to show the world that I'm something. I'm not this. You put me down. No one's ever going to put me down again. I'm going to achieve. But it can produce a narcissistic approach to achieving. That's why there's a bigger proportionality of CEOs that have got a narcissistic trait than lower down. Yeah. They've done studies on it, haven't they? Yeah. They found this Gordon Gekko. No one, I'm boom, 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 right? Physically, right, they can achieve and overachieve. There's a fantastic documentary the BBC put out, it might have been Channel 4 actually, regarding the role of the SAS in the Falklands War. They interviewed 5 SAS soldiers. 3 of them had come from care homes. And they said, all of us are from estates from bad backgrounds. All of us, except for Bear Grylls and some posh kids. I've got a story about him, but I'll say that another day. Right. So there's when you look at sportsmen, boxers, some of them have come from terrible backgrounds. And that's that, I've been hurt. No one will ever hurt me as much as you've hurt me. Right. And some of them are impervious to pain. It doesn't matter how much you hurt me. You can't hurt me. I've been hurt. I know pain.
So you're saying the Scandinavians teach the child.
This is this point. But the middle one, right, is your emotion. Right. Your emotion. Right. When a child, so someone can achieve incredibly well intellectually and physically if they've been abused, right? And in many cases do. But emotionally, it ain't going to happen unless you get intense therapy, right? When that child is abused, say at 5, could be 8, could be 9, could be 10, right? That emotional clock stops, bang, stops.
Yeah, I remember something.
So what you'll do is, if as gentlemen, we can talk about a point of variance. Might be politics, it might be colours, it might be football, it might be anything, right? But as gentlemen, we can agree to disagree. So if we are at difference with something, you got your point, you got a point, you've got a few points here, I've got mine, but you ain't going to really change me. Let's have a drink, forget about it. A broken person can't. You tell a child no, who's a spoiled kid, and it's, I hate you, I want you to die. How many people do we know in life that are like that? You cross them over something stupid. Look at road rage. Someone cuts you up, you get a bit angry, but there's others will get out and smash cars.
Kill people.
Because they're damaged child. See, they've been triggered. You've been triggered. And this is what happens with survivors of abuse. They can be easily triggered, and they will commit appalling crimes of violence because that inner child has gone crazy, emotionally gone crazy, gone out of the box and can't get back in.
And we're never attending to the child problem. We just wait till they're adults and in our face and then arrest them and bang them up.
Okay, so if we go on that, right, why would we even bother dealing with them, right? When I was on Vice, it was split into 2 categories, right? There was one category, there was only 2 of us on it, and this was a street kids scene, right? 2 of us on that, right? The other one was the brothels. Now, the Proceeds of Crime Act had just been brought in, right? POCA. This is how they screwed Al Pacino, and now it's a work of genius, whoever invented it, hit them in the pocket, right? The kids, that scene was bottom end. These kids were being traded for crack cocaine, some money, but if they got money, those that got it spent it on crack anyway. They were low life, It was appalling. But they were getting the money, and they were just frittling away on nonsense and everything else, right? So there was no proceeds of crime. What were we going to steal from them, Their pouch of tobacco, their lighter, their shoes, their trainers, what? They didn't have anything. Yeah. They all lived in council accommodation, and screwed that up and everything else. Whereas the brothels was a business and going concern, right? There was money to be taken back on that. And also there was foreign travel on that. So that office, all the officers had their passport in their desk because one day they'd come in off to Thailand, off to Latvia, off here. They was always off. And when you go away, you get $200 a day. You used to get business flights because you was on business, and you got put in a hotel, right? So who wouldn't want to go there? Yeah. So they used to say, right, can anyone go to, for example, Thailand, right? It was always in Thailand. Yeah. And okay, right. And someone else to say, end of the week, you're going out to Kiev in Ukraine. I say, Wedger, Bethnal Green for you, Peckham. And that was me, Peckham, Bethnal Green. But what my point with that is, it's not fashionable, it's not trendy, it's not glamorous,
right? Yeah.
To do that bottom end stuff. No one wants it. And the kids I were dealing with, the girls in a brothel, some of them could be beautiful looking, and they could be very alluring. And some people did cross that line, I was dealing with kids that were on crack cocaine, were damaged, and would bite your face off. Yeah. If you got them on a bad day.
Yeah.
So there's no money to be getting back. So the government had an initiative that the crime should pay for itself. So they would push everything where they could steal the money, but when they couldn't, they ignored it.
Yeah.
Right. And from cradle to grave, these children make money. Right. They make money. So from the family courts, when there's a custody battle and the kid goes put into care, right? The barristers, the solicitors make the money, right? The kids go into the care system, they get sent there £2,000 per child per week. So as a business, if you bought kids home, which is what people do now, they buy them. They're not like the big village. They call them village schools. There would be whole villages that an anthropologist or the government would build, like the Bernardo's estates and things like that. They've gone. It's all gone out to private concern and developments. Now you could go into Dalton's Weekly and buy a kids' home, like an old people's home. You're going to make 10 grand a week. You're going to make 40 grand a month. Right, the kids don't get helped; they just get picked up on a Thursday, get trafficked out.
It's a commodity, isn't it?
They're a commodity,
even in that system.
And of course, they then make money because they start doing crime. The social work, everyone makes money.
And now with the private prisons from America, even the caging of them, so the whole system, everyone's making money, so everyone's got a reason to turn their eyes away.
Well, it's now trafficking because they're looking at sending prisoners to Estonia. There'll be a fee for that. So but it doesn't work, you see, because you've got that 80% flip around. The system don't work.
I want to, because we've got to finish soon, but I want to end on, what did you like about, what do you remember positive things that you remember about the police?
Do you know, it ended sour for me, but I'm in the process of writing at the moment, writing a book about my experiences. And I've been writing it and I've been laughing and laughing. I mean, some of the things I can't discuss them because it'll get me and others in a world of trouble. But, the main thing I missed was the camaraderie and the banter. The banter was so important. And the drinking. It was so important. It was how we... And also some of the people you dealt with, there were so many... Call them fuckwits. It was just funny.
Characters, just characters.
How do people get like that? How has life gone that this has turned up?
There was a story I tried to repeat afterwards. I thought when I speak to John, I must ask him about it again. It's a bit morbid, but I couldn't remember if I'd misimagined it. So do you remember you said you was working? And it's not funny. I don't know why I'm laughing. A guy got run over under a bus or something, and you went under there, and he said he was dead. But you said something. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I think this might have been the case where the guy had jumped off a building.
Right.
And had landed on the roof of another building.
Right.
And no one could get to him. And it'd fallen a long way. And I managed to drive.
Yeah, just remember it wrong.
I think I climbed up a drain pipe because I was into tree surgery and I was a fit lad. And I climbed up. But he'd escaped from a secure unit and he'd had a knife. And so he was deemed as armed. Right. So they sent the armed teams down, right, armed response team. And a lot of them are ex-military guys. So I've climbed up and of course the armed response unit turned up. And one of them, he's an ex-army fellow. And he went, we can't go on his own. You've got to have someone with a gun with him. So the fire brigade are trying to put their cradles to get up there. And there's just so many of them. They trip over each other, the reasons. Anyway, so I managed to climb up this drain pipe onto this flat roof where this lad's there. He's splattered on the roof, and this military guy jumps up. Army lad gets up there, and it's clear he's of no harm to anyone. I think the knife long gone by then, and he said, "He's clearly dead, isn't he?" I went, "Yeah." He said, "Look, fire brigade are coming up. Just stick him in the recovery position. Make out we've done something." Right. So I went, all right. I said, what is it? He said, oh, you've got to put an arm like that. One on, the legs got to be like that. So we sort of...
Like you're sleeping.
Yeah. And I think we got it wrong. Nah, son, it's got... And we're both rolling up a cigarette. And he said, oh, his chin's got to be up. So I spat in, his chin's got to be up. And I went, oh, yeah. So I've got a cigarette in my mouth and I've got my foot. I just booted the guy's chin like that. And as I've done it, the bloke's gone, ooh.
Oh, Jesus.
And he went, he's still alive. And he was still alive. And of course, then his pulse went, and then we started doing it. We kept him alive for about 15 minutes. Oh, God. I gave him a little kick.
Even though I knew the story, it still got me.
It's a mess. But I go back to that when he ended up in New York. I go out there, and they've got the custody, the front desk sergeant. They're very old school. What we had in the Victorian era, they've got now. They've not abandoned their public. We have over here. And he's got this Irish tricolour badge on,
Yeah.
And I said, look, I've come to see this detective so-and-so. And he went, yeah, where are you from? And I went, we're from the Metropolitan Police. There should have been something sent over saying we're here. And he went, no, nothing come through to me. And he looked at me and he goes, where are you from, son? And I went, I just told her that. I said, yeah, we're from London, from the Metropolitan Police. He went, no. Where are you from? Your skin colour, you're dark. I went, oh, no, I'm British. He said, you don't look British. I went, I don't know what their impression of something British. Yeah. I went, well, yeah, I suppose. I said, my father's Sicilian. He goes, you are effing Mick? And I went, oh no, Spick. And I went, I was thinking, I said, I suppose so. He said, no, you can't talk to me.
Oh.
I think, what's that about? And he whistles over. He goes, Vincenzo. And there's this little grey-haired Italian guy, right? He said, there's some Spick Bobby from London to see ya. And he comes walking over, because I'm never the best presenting.
Yeah, right.
And he's the same. He's scruffy. He's got grey hair. And he comes up to me. He goes, what's your name, son? I went, John. And he pokes me. He goes, hey, Johnny. I said, well, what's your name? He went, he called him Vincenzo. So I went, very British. I went, hey, Vinny. Yeah. Like that, poked him back. Right, yeah. The next thing, he gets me in a headlock.
Right? Bit of a jump.
Goes, hey, Johnny. Yeah. And he pulls me on the floor and starts tickling me. Hey.
So trying to be polite.
Just met as well.
Yeah.
On no boundaries. No boundaries.
Yeah. And he's tickling me, going, hey, Johnny. And he goes, F that Mick bastard. He said, you're not talking to him. Come, you're one of us. And I said, what's that about, Vinny? He said, no, we don't talk to the Micks. Fuck the Micks. He said, no. He said, no, we stick to ourselves. He said, the Polish guys are okay. He said, you're Catholic? I went, yeah. He said, yeah, we're all Catholic. And he went, let me show you something, Johnny. So we go down into the locker room, and it's so like London, it's untrue, you know. It's like the old London stations. And I'm blown away by it. And he went, you've got to see the locker rooms. I bet you haven't got this in London. And because in London, we're all together, you know, in the underground lockers, you know. And we go into this old Victorian building, and we go in the locker room, and there's these grey lockers, all neat and tidy. And he goes, that's the Polish guys. He said, they're okay, we like them, but everything with them is neat and tidy, you know. Right. And he said, come over here. And then there's the Irish. He said, that's a mixed section. He said, no. And some of them have got bits of black lining on the doors, these grey locker doors. I said, well, what's all that about? He went, no. He said, that's when the integrity guy comes along. And he said, someone might go, Sergeant O'Reilly is, you know, whatever, you know, and the integrity guy can't have that. So he puts the bit of black paint on it. Come to the Italian section, all the lockers are painted black. And I went, Vinny, what's that about? He goes, I said, the other day, that's my one. And he said, someone put Vinny's mum suck elephant dick. And then, so he's gone and done the other guys, you know. And all they do is just abuse each other. He said every week he comes and sprays our lockers. There's like layers of paint on it.
Layers.
Barely get the door open.
Is this room smaller?
Yeah. But I couldn't believe it. It was so segregated. Right. It was just mad, unbelievable. Yeah.
Well, listen, we'll end on that happy note. Anything you want to mention? You're always doing charity things.
Yeah, I've got a Patreon site.
Yeah. You pop one up? Okay.
Yeah, there is one out there. People do subscribe to it, but it does enable me to do bits and pieces. Yeah. I'm writing a book. I went at 220 pages. It's currently at 160. And
it's a book of your experiences, or is it something specific?
Yeah, all experiences, yeah. I'm currently working on a documentary called Redemption. We've got 3 people at the moment. We've got former Cray Twins gangster, Chrissy Lambriano. We got a wonderful ex. He's a lovely guy. He's an ex gangster really from the East End called Ez Catel. And we got Stephen French, the big bad Scouse guy that's turned his life around. All of them. It's their testimonies of redemption, how they turned their life around, how the system couldn't do it, and how they did it. Right. So we're doing that. If people want to support that, there's.
Do you know your Patreon name?
Yeah, I think just JonWedger. You put it in.
We'll
Patreon.
put it in. We'll put it in the link. We'll find out from you. Okay.
So we're just going through the process of editing that, getting that out there, and we're still cracking on. I do a lot of stuff on my own now. I don't tend to do it as a big collective because that all seems to go a bit wrong. But I've got a little hardcore group and. We're still interested if anyone wants a testimony put out there. I'll happily do that, providing it matches criteria and everything else. But also the ritualistic abuse. It's becoming very on vogue now. And there is a group now that was set up by an ex-policeman who was just so appalled that the government's doing nothing to do with spiritual and ritual abuse where other countries have got dedicated occult crimes unit. And he's approached me, and I'm doing a lot with him now. And so if you have got anything to do with your involvement as a victim and survivor of occult-related abuse and you want to speak about it, you can get in touch with me from Jon Wedger, WEDGR Foundation @gmail.com.
There you go.
And
are you still doing your swimming at the secret place?
Doing me pants swimming against depression. So I haven't done any so much this summer live because I ended up quite sick.
From the cold?
Maybe from Wells disease, from the water.
Oh, my God. All the pollution.
No, I've ended up with a terrible health scare, and it really set me back. Yeah. So I'm not out of the woods yet, but it's been tough times for the last few months. That's why no one's really seen or heard from me, because I've been ill, really, basically. Been very, very ill. So hopefully
you've got to be careful now with the water. You can't just go for a swim. It's not the 60s.
No, I know.
Everything's been sold off. What's the Chinese flag outside this Devon River?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, what are they doing here? Oh, bless it. If they can swim it, so can I.
You'd have to be careful now. I'd be worried about swimming in the water. I don't know if that's an over-exaggeration, but I wouldn't want to get in.
I mean, I've just been on the south coast and I thought, I'm not swimming that water. I did in Thailand. Right. Because I was like, oh, they've got clean water over there. That's fine. But I just thought, now Britain. Dodgy,
I mean, with us, it's most things. You've got to put sewage. You can put sewage in a tidal waterway, but it's got to go out a distance, and most it's treated. When you go abroad, some of them haven't got them restrictions. So a couple of years ago, I did swam. Used to do all my training in the Canary Islands, and I swam. It was about a 9-mile swim in Gran Canaria, and as I was coming back in, I went past a big holiday resort during the middle of the day, and here the pipes used to have to go out a mile. As I went by, the pipe was just there, and they opened the sluice gates. Oh my God. And I ended up, my eyes, I couldn't see for a week.
Bloody hell.
It was horrific. Yeah, I got quite ill from that.
Is that what recently you're talking about?
A couple of years ago that was. And it was Gran Canaria, and they just pumped it straight in. I think because it's warm, their sea's a bit forgiving. Ours is murky because it's...
But so you got sick again recently?
I've had quite a bad health scare, so it's an ongoing thing. Right. So... hopefully that'll get resolved. But I haven't done a great deal. Yeah. But I was meant to do a bike ride. I was meant to do a bike ride from Parliament all the way to Perth in Scotland for there's a kids' home called Fornethi where there was a lot of abuse, and I said I would raise awareness, raise money, and all that for these survivor groups. So I got hold of an old post office bike. Stripped it down, rebuilt it, sprayed it all up, got it all powder coated. It looked beautiful. And the wheels had the old Sturmley Archer gearing system on them. And I tried to fix them myself, grease them up, and they all fell apart. So there was a guy, an expert in Sturmley Archer wheels, and that said, I'll do them for you. Bring them down to me. He's down in near Brighton. And I put them by the back of my car to load up. Took the dog for a walk, come back, and the... Romanian scrap metal gypsy guy took them. So I couldn't get in hold of any wheels, so I didn't do my bike ride. Oh, Christ. So he nicked my wheels, so I had my wheels nicked.
He nicked me wheels. Did you phone the police?
My postal, yeah. I'm still waiting for them.
Who's that, John?
Yeah.
That's
it, yeah. What that conspiracy thing? We're not having... It's quite funny you say that. There was a member of Parliament that helped me out with something. Oh. And we needed access to a bit of land that high-speed HS2 had taken, right? Okay. And so it was government land, and it was all secure. And we went down there with some cadaver dogs to search for a missing child. And when we went there, it was all ex-army guys there. And one of them said, "I know you. You're." I said, "Oh, we want to get on it." He said, "No one's allowed on it." The government said no. He said, "Well, I'd let you on, but we can't." I said, "No, don't worry about it." So I went to my MP, and then I went to this other MP, and he said, "Yeah, I'll help you. I'm going to get in touch with the MP for transport and get them to let you get on this land." So he had this meeting in Parliament with the Minister for Transport, and he said, "Look, we need to do this." He said, "Yeah, who is it I need to allow on?" And he went through the names. Then he went, JonWedger went, "No, it's conspiracy theory."
Oh, no.
They did let us on. Yeah, they did let us on eventually, but he said, "No, he's a conspiracy theorist. He's a nutcase, that man." Yeah, so but none shall call it conspiracy.
And you said you do get recognised, and people are quite nice. That's good.
It's always positive.
Yeah.
Always positive. I walk down the street, people come up and hug me and say, "Thank you so much."
You are the nation's most loved retired police officer. Always the most comments we ever get is when you're on.
So the funny thing with that is, I'm in walking through Trafalgar Square, and there's a guy begging, homeless guy.
Yeah.
He's a Rastafarian, right? And there's a copper, and as I go up, the Rasta guy goes, "Oh, I want to thank you. I was in a kids' home back in the 60s, and man, I love what you're doing. Thank you so much." And he gave me a big hug. And then this copper come over and he went, "John," he said, we watch your videos at work. And he said, "Power to you," and give me a hug. And I said to copper, "Sorry, mate, but his hug meant a bit more than yours."
Yeah.
You know?
Well, listen, just keep on doing what you're doing. You've always got an open door here. We're going to try and get you back on a regular basis now that we've got our foot in under us for a while. Yeah. And good luck with everything. I can speak to you about some of the stuff you're doing as well, because I've got some connections to things. But yeah, we'll definitely have you back on, especially when you've got anything coming out. So keep in contact for more Jon Wedger.
Thanks for coming down.
Nice to see you, John.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye then.